It all began with the insatiable greed of colonial powers who saw the Democratic Republic of the Congo as nothing more than a source of riches to be exploited. The ivory, rubber, cobalt, coltan, and even other natural resources were taken by force with no regard for the lives of the Congolese people. The scars of this brutal period still runs deep in the hearts of the Congolese. So today, we'll take a closer look at the history and the current events surrounding the conflict in the DRC. Many historians and scholars have referred to the war as the Great African War or Africa's World War. This is arguable, but for me it makes sense because major world powers have deliberately condemned the DRC to a war zone for decades. Let's take a brief history of the Congo. To fully understand the gruesome account of the conflict, we must explore DRC's history. For those who have not heard of the DRC, it is a country located in Central Africa, and it is about the size of Western Europe. Well, that's huge. The Congo is the largest producer of cobalt globally, with 70% of the mineral produced here. Well, cobalt usually comes into play because it's both very energy dense. It means it can handle lots of electricity relative to the amount used. Besides, about 60% of the world's coltan is produced in the Congo. Coltan is used to manufacture capacitors, which are used typically for mobile phones, personal computers, automotives, electronics, and even cameras. So basically, for every text, every call, every transaction on your phone, or even the Tesla that you guys drive, you have the people of the Congo to thank. By the way, the DRC was admitted to the East African Community in April of 2022, which is vital for some reasons I will tell you later. Now, let's go back to the history. Before the arrival of the Europeans, the Kingdom of the Congo had existed for close to half a millennium, between 1390 and 1857. In the infamous Berlin Conference of 1884, 13 European nations and the United States came together and ratified the notorious scramble and partition of Africa. This group of old men who hardly knew the Congo allowed King Leopold II to establish the Congo Free State. Of course, needless to say, the Congo has never been free since then. Now, let's fast forward to between 1885 after the partition and 1910. That's when Leopold II regime killed more than 10 million Congolese people. Imagine that, which is basically more than half of the populace at the time, because statistically shows the Congo had about 17 million people at the time. Millions of children were starved and worked to death. Countless women were kidnapped and raped, and children were forced into the labor camps where they were routinely whipped and abused. In a book by Alice Harris, the book is titled The Journey of Lady Alice Seeley. It narrates the accounts of the Congo victims. In one of the episodes, she speaks of a 5-year-old girl named Boali, whose hand and foot were chopped off because his father's name was Nsala, who failed to meet the daily rubber quota. Now they punished the child for the dad's mistakes. If that's not enough, the Belgian forces killed Boali and her mother, cannibalized them, and presented the leftovers to the father. How brutal. There are countless similar cases, and the Belgian government has refused to acknowledge these atrocities. Following international pressure, Belgium took over the Congo as its colony between 1908 and 1960, and between 1960 and 2003. Now the DRC conflict has raged on. In one way or the other, the conflict has been going on since DRC gained independence in the 1960s. The DRC in the 70s and 80s was ruled by a dictator by the name of Mobutu Sese Seko. Well, in a future episode, maybe I'll create an exclusive focusing on this tyrant. Now, what exactly caused the DRC conflict? The cause of the crisis can be traced back to the colonial history. After the independence of the Congo from Belgium, The country was led by Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, the famous Patrice Lumumba. The time the president was put into power was Joseph Kasavubu. Lumumba's attempts to unify the nation and gain independence from foreign powers were met with opposition from the Belgian government, which had a vested interest in controlling the country. In 1961, Lumumba was assassinated by the CIA with the help of the Belgian and Congolese forces, sparking a period of upheaval and instability. Now, the killing of Patrice Lumumba marked a turbulent period in the DRC's history. You see, Lumumba was a Pan-Africanist. He took over the principles of Nkrumah, Nyerere, and the rest. Now he was a loved person across Africa and also in the DRC. Then came Mobutu Sese Seko in 1965, who seized power and established a dictatorship. He was supported by some of the Western and African nations who saw him as a bulwark against communism. During his 30-period reign, Mobutu used his power to enrich himself and his cronies at the expense of the country's resources. Let's fast forward to 1990, because Mobutu's period was the 70s and the 80s. There was a rebel group that came up led by Laurent Desire Kabila, who you'll find later that he became the president, but he was then assassinated, and then his son took over the presidency. This guy, Laurent Desire, he managed to overthrow President Mobutu Sese Seko with the help of the Ugandans, Museveni and Paul Kagame of the Rwanda. Well, at the time, many argue that the war was caused by internal ethnic conflicts, though as a good student of history and geopolitics, everyone knows that it was majorly influenced by external factors, particularly powerful Western nations seeking to destabilize the Congo to benefit from this resource-rich country. So, what specifically caused the First Congo War in 1996? There were two wars, by the way. There was the First Congo War and the Second Congo War. The First Congo War was in 1996, and then the Second Congo War was in 1998. The conflict in the DRC was intensified mostly by the London Genocide in 1994. Briefly, let me explain the London Genocide. It was say an ethnic conflict that transgressed into a genocide whereby the Hutus massacred the Tutsis, the two biggest nations, or biggest, we consider them nations or tribes, in other words, in Rwanda. It led to the death of about 800,000 to 1 million people in a span of 100 days. Well, maybe I'll cover that also. Many of the perpetrators of the genocide fled to the DRC, where they continued to carry out attacks on the ethnic Tutsi population who were in the eastern side of the DRC. This led to the First Congo War, which lasted from 1996 to 1997. Now, the war involved multiple African countries. You see, the years after Mobutu saw a period of increased violence and civil unrest. And then the Rwandan genocide spilled over into the DRC with the Tutsi-led Rwandan Patriotic Front led by Paul Kagame invading the eastern side of the DRC. So how about the current situation in the Congo? Well, the race to exploit Africa's resources is continuing to pick up, especially with Russia, India, and China fast pacing the West in the African region. It's no secret that some of the imperialists are still in the continent, camouflaging as peacekeeping nations. The current situation in the DRC is a complex one, although the efforts of the current president Felix Tshisekedi are gradually bearing fruit. There's still a need for more African leaders to participate in restoring peace in one of Africa's crown jewels. It is estimated that over 5 million people have died in the conflict since 1998. That's crazy, making it the deadliest war in modern African history. Recently, the new Kenyan president, William Ruto, deployed about 1,000 Kenyan Defense Forces soldiers to Goma, the eastern side of the DRC. Yeah, it was about 1,000, I think. I'm optimistic that such collaborative efforts with the help of the neighboring countries, as well as the admission of the DRC to East African community, will help restore peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Well, in recent years, there have been some signs of progress. The country has has held peaceful presidential elections in 2018, which was largely democratic. The current president, Felix Tshisekedi, has vowed to bring peace and stability to the country and has taken steps to address some of the underlying causes of the conflict. Despite these challenges, the Congolese people continue to show resilience and hope. From small-scale farming to community-led education programs, they are working to rebuild their communities and create a brighter future for all. With determination, courage, and the support of the international community, I believe the DRC can rise from the ashes of the conflict and become a shining example of resilience and hope across Africa. So, what do you think is the long-term solution of the current DRC conflict? I'm looking forward to engaging you in the comment section. Please suggest some of the topics that you think I should cover in the future. And please subscribe to my channel. Until next time, kwaheri.